Stop before you water that wilted garden again. Some of those plants need water right now, but others could be damaged by the rescue you are about to try. After a day above 100 degrees, the whole garden can look finished. Tomato leaves hang like wet cloth. Cucumber vines collapse across the soil. Zucchini leaves flatten against the ground. Basil loses its shine. Strawberry leaves curl at the edges. Pepper blossoms drop, corn leaves roll, and young melons sit under a sun that feels too strong for anything living. The first instinct is usually to move fast. Turn on the hose, soak every bed. Cut away every leaf that looks weak. Add fertilizer, because the plants must need energy. Pull the worst-looking plant before it spreads a problem to the rest of the garden. But tonight, the fastest reaction may not be the best reaction. Wilted does not automatically mean dead, and green does not automatically mean safe. Over the next few minutes, we are going to walk through 15 common garden crops and decide what each one is actually telling us after extreme heat. We will look at tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, zucchini, green beans, okra, sweet corn, watermelon, cantaloupe, potatoes, sweet potatoes, strawberries, basil, and Swiss chard. Some of these crops may stand back up after sunset. Some may look better tomorrow morning but still lose flowers or young fruit. Others may keep their leaves while the real damage develops in the roots, the growing tip, or the part of the crop you were hoping to harvest. The goal is not to promise that every plant will recover. The goal is to give every living plant its best realistic chance. That means slowing down long enough to separate temporary heat wilt from true drought, and true drought from a root zone that is already too wet. It means knowing when shade matters more than water, when patience matters more than pruning, and when a plant needs to be checked again before you make an irreversible decision. If you can only remember one rule from this entire rescue, remember this: diagnose first, rescue second. Start by looking at the time of day. A plant that droops at 3 in the afternoon and rises again after sunset is not behaving the same way as a plant that is still collapsed at sunrise. Many crops close their stomata and reduce water loss when heat becomes extreme. Their leaves may hang because the roots cannot move water through the plant as quickly as the leaves are losing it. That can happen even when moisture is still available below the surface. Now look at the soil, but do not trust only what you see on top. A dusty, pale surface may be covering cool, moist soil a few inches lower. Push a finger, a wooden skewer, or a narrow soil probe down into the root zone. Check more than one place. Near the stem, the soil may still be moist. Near the outer edge of the root system, it may be dry. In a container, the center may hold water while the outer wall is hot and dry. In a grow bag, the sides may lose moisture much faster than the middle. In a raised bed, one corner may drain quickly while another remains wet. If the soil is dry where the active roots are growing, water slowly. Do not blast the surface and walk away. Dry soil can repel water, especially in containers where the potting mix has pulled away from the sides. Apply a small amount, pause, let it soak, and then water again. Your goal is to move moisture downward through the root zone, not to create a puddle at the stem or send water racing across the surface. If the soil is already cool and moist, stop. The plant may be overheated rather than thirsty. Give it temporary relief from the harshest afternoon sun. A piece of shade cloth, a patio umbrella, a lightweight row cover held above the foliage, or a move to bright filtered light may reduce stress. Do not wrap the plant tightly or block airflow. Do not cover it with plastic. The goal is to lower radiant heat, not trap more heat around the leaves. Check drainage before adding more water. A container can look dry on top while the lower half remains saturated. Make sure drainage holes are open. Lift the pot if you can. A heavy container with limp foliage may be holding far more water than the leaves suggest. In ground, look for water standing around the crown or soil that smells sour. A heat-stressed plant with oxygen-starved roots can wilt just as dramatically as a dry plant. Now check the plant itself. Feel the main stem. Look at the growing tip. Green, firm tissue is a better sign than a leaf that happens to be hanging. A soft, darkened stem, a collapsed crown, or a growing point that has turned brown and brittle is more serious. Examine the flowers and the smallest fruit. Heat damage often appears there after the foliage has already lifted. Do not fertilize tonight. Roots under heat stress do not need a sudden push of salts and fresh growth. Do not strip away every damaged leaf. A leaf that is green but limp may recover, and even a partially scorched leaf can still shade fruit and stems. Wait until the plant has rehydrated and the temperature has fallen before deciding what is truly dead. One of the most dramatic-looking plants on this list may recover faster than the plant standing upright beside it. That is why we are not going to rank these crops by appearance. We are going to rank them by what is happening in the root zone, the growing point, the flowers, and the fruit. And we will begin with the crop most gardeners are afraid to lose: tomatoes. A tomato plant can look terrible during the hottest part of the day and still have a healthy root system. Large leaves lose water quickly, especially when the plant is carrying a heavy load of fruit. The first question is not whether the leaves are hanging. The first question is whether they begin to lift when the sun drops and the air cools. Check the soil several inches down and several inches away from the stem. Mature tomato roots spread wider than many gardeners expect. If you water only a small circle at the base, part of the active root zone may remain dry. When the soil is truly dry, water slowly and deeply enough to moisten that wider area. If water runs off, pause and let it soak before continuing. If the soil is already moist, do not keep adding water simply because the leaves have not recovered yet. Pay close attention to plants in containers. A black plastic pot, a dark grow bag, or a container sitting on hot concrete can heat the root zone even when the potting mix is damp. Move the container away from a heat-reflecting wall or lift it off the hottest surface. Give the plant afternoon shade without putting it into deep darkness all day. Now look at the fruit. A tomato that suddenly loses leaf cover may develop pale, yellowish, or whitish patches on the side facing the sun. That is sun scald, and removing more foliage can expose even more fruit. Keep green leaves in place unless they are clearly dead or severely diseased. A leaf with a brown edge may still be doing useful work. Then look at the flowers. Extreme heat can interfere with pollination, and blossoms may drop even after the plant looks hydrated again. Do not respond by pouring on high nitrogen fertilizer. That can push tender, new foliage while the roots are still recovering, and it will not reverse heat damage that has already affected a flower. Keep the moisture steady, reduce afternoon stress, and wait for the next round of blossoms when conditions improve. If a fruit is cracked, sunken, or badly burned, decide whether it is still usable and remove it only when necessary. Do not automatically strip every imperfect fruit from the plant. A plant that is moderately stressed may continue ripening larger fruit while abandoning the smallest ones. Watch what it chooses to hold. Tomorrow morning, check the tomato before the sun reaches it. Are the leaves lifted? Is the growing tip firm and green? Are the flowers still attached? Are the smallest fruits still expanding? A tomato can recover its posture overnight and still reveal the true cost of the heat through blossom drop and stalled fruit. The leaves tell you whether the plant rehydrated. The flowers and fruit tell you whether production continues. Peppers often hide stress longer than tomatoes. Their leaves may remain partly upright while blossoms fall or young fruit stop growing. That can make a pepper plant look safer than it really is. Begin with the container or bed. Pepper roots need steady moisture, but they do not respond well to a cycle of severe dryness followed by flooding. If the soil has dried deeply, re-wet it gradually. If it is still moist, reduce the afternoon heat rather than adding another heavy irrigation. In a small pot, check the sides as well as the center because the root ball may dry unevenly. Examine the fruit for light-colored, papery patches on the sun-facing side. Bell peppers and other thick-walled peppers can suffer sun scald when leaves wilt or are removed. Keep living foliage around developing fruit. If the plant has a few damaged leaves, delay pruning until you know which ones recover. Check the smallest peppers. A plant may keep mature fruit while dropping tiny fruit and blossoms. That is not proof that the plant is dying. It may be reducing demand while it recovers. Harvest peppers that are already at the stage you want, especially if removing them can reduce the load on a stressed plant. But do not pick immature fruit, simply because you are afraid the plant will fail. Temporary afternoon shade can help, especially for containers against a south or west-facing wall. Shade the plant during the harshest hours, not from sunrise to sunset. It still needs light to continue growing. Do not feed heavily. A concentrated fertilizer in hot, partly dry soil can increase root stress. Wait until the plant holds its leaves normally through the cooler part of the day and begins showing stable new growth. Then resume a light, appropriate feeding schedule if the crop needs it. The pepper may never collapse like a cucumber, but its smallest fruit can tell a more serious story. Look beyond the overall shape of the plant. Check the blossoms, the fruit surface, and the growing tips. Eggplant is famous for loving warmth, but heat tolerance is not the same as drought immunity. Its broad leaves can droop, and its dark fruit can become extremely hot in direct sun. A plant may survive the day, while flowers abort or exposed fruit develops damaged patches. Check moisture where the roots actually are. Eggplant in the ground may have a broad root system, while eggplant in a container can run out of usable moisture much faster. If the pot is dark and sitting on stone or concrete, the root zone may be receiving heat from every direction. Move it to a cooler surface, or add space beneath the pot so air can circulate. When the soil is dry, water deeply and slowly. When it is moist, focus on reducing radiant heat and protecting the root zone with an appropriate mulch layer. Keep mulch a little away from the stem so the crown stays dry and visible. Do not remove a large leaf only because part of it is scorched. That leaf may still shade a fruit below it. Check whether the leaf blade remains mostly green and whether the leaf stem is firm. Remove tissue later if it becomes fully brown, brittle, or diseased, but do not create a bare plant during the hottest weather. Look at the growing tip. If it is firm and green, the plant has a strong path toward recovery. Look at the flowers. If they drop, maintain stable care rather than trying to force immediate replacement growth. Look at the fruit. A small fruit that remains firm may continue developing. One that softens, yellows abnormally, or stops changing may have been abandoned by the plant. Heat tolerance protects eggplant only until the root zone runs out of usable moisture. Give it what it needs, but do not assume that more water is always the answer. The next crop looks much less tolerant because cucumber leaves can collapse within a single hot afternoon. Cucumber plants often create the most frightening scene in the garden. Their leaves are large, thin, and exposed, and a healthy vine can look almost lifeless when the afternoon sun is strongest. Do not judge the vine at that moment alone. Follow the vine back to the crown. Check the soil around the main root area, not only beneath the far end of the vine. If the soil is dry several inches down, water slowly at the root zone. If it is moist, provide relief from the strongest sun and wait for the temperature to fall. A cucumber leaf that begins lifting after sunset is showing that heat, not complete root failure, was a major part of the problem. Avoid spraying hot leaves with cold water in full sun. Water the soil. Keep the foliage as dry as practical, especially late in the day when leaves may remain wet into the night. Mulch can help stabilize moisture, but keep it from pressing tightly against the crown. Do not cut off every leaf that is lying flat. Green, flexible leaves may recover. Removing them immediately reduces the plant's ability to make energy and exposes fruit that was previously shaded. Wait until morning. A leaf that is still brown, crisp, and lifeless after the plant has rehydrated can be removed later. Check the cucumbers themselves. Heat and uneven moisture can affect quality. Fruit may become misshapen, grow slowly, or develop a bitter taste, especially when the plant experiences repeated stress. Harvest fruit that has reached a good size rather than leaving it to become oversized and demanding. Removing mature cucumbers can reduce the burden on the vine and encourage it to direct energy toward new growth when conditions improve. Look beneath the leaves for spider mites, whiteflies, or other pests that take advantage of stressed plants. Fine stippling, yellowing, webbing, or sticky residue is not simply heat damage. A heat wave can weaken the vine, while a pest population grows unnoticed. The most useful cucumber test happens twice. Check the plant after sunset, then check it again early the next morning. If it lifts at night, but collapses quickly again before the day becomes extremely hot, the root zone may still be too dry, too hot, restricted, or damaged. If it remains firm through the morning and wilts only at peak heat, temporary afternoon protection may be enough while the weather stays extreme. If these leaves rise after sunset, the plant was asking for relief from heat, not necessarily another flood of water. That lesson becomes even more important with zucchini, because every zucchini leaf can make temporary wilt look like a total collapse. Zucchini leaves act like giant solar panels. They can lose firmness rapidly, and their long leaf stalks make the entire plant appear flattened. The center of the plant matters more than the lowest leaf. Look into the crown. Is the central growing point green and firm? Are the youngest leaves still folded and alive? Are the leaf stalks firm near the base, or are they soft and collapsing? A healthy center means the plant may replace damaged outer leaves. Check soil moisture around the root zone. If it is dry, water at the soil level, slowly enough to reach the roots. Avoid pouring water directly into the crown, where trapped moisture can contribute to rot. If the soil is already moist, shade the plant during the hottest part of the afternoon and allow it time to cool. Do not remove leaves just because they touch the soil at 4 in the afternoon. Give them a chance to recover. Later, remove leaves that remain completely dead, broken, or seriously diseased. Keep enough healthy foliage to shade the crown and developing fruit. Examine small zucchini. A young fruit that turns yellow, softens, or stops enlarging may have failed because of poor pollination or stress. Remove fruit that is clearly deteriorating so it does not rot against the plant. Larger fruit that is ready should be harvested promptly. An oversized zucchini asks the plant to continue supporting a fruit that is already past its best eating stage. Be careful not to confuse every pale patch with heat injury. Zucchini leaves naturally show patterns on some varieties, and powdery mildew creates a different kind of white coating. Inspect the leaf surface and underside, rather than making a decision from a distance. Tomorrow morning, judge the zucchini by its center, not by the most dramatic outer leaf. If the crown is healthy and new growth is firm, the plant still has a future. Green beans may look less dramatic, but their flowers can disappear before you notice the real loss. Green beans are often grown for a continuous harvest, so the rescue question is not only whether the plant survives, it is whether the plant can keep producing flowers and tender pods. Check the tips of bush plants or climbing vines. Are they still green and flexible? Look for flowers on the ground and tiny pods that have yellowed or stopped growing. High heat can reduce flower retention and interfere with pod set even when the leaves remain partly upright. Keep the root zone evenly moist, not saturated. Beans dislike repeated swings between bone-dry soil and heavy flooding. If the soil is dry, re-wet it gradually. If it is moist, add temporary afternoon shade and wait. In containers, check whether roots are crowded or the pot has become hot enough to stress them. Harvest pods that are ready. Tender beans, left too long, become tough, and continue drawing resources from a plant that is trying to recover. A careful harvest reduces the load without stripping the plant of foliage. Do not apply a heavy nitrogen feeding. Beans do not need a sudden rush of soft new growth during extreme heat. Stable moisture and moderate conditions are more useful than a strong fertilizer response. Inspect the undersides of leaves. Spider mites thrive in hot, dry conditions and can cause fine, pale speckling that may be mistaken for heat stress. If pests are present, deal with them carefully and repeatedly, rather than assuming water alone will restore the plant. This is where the meaning of recovery changes. From now on, we are not checking only whether a crop remains alive. We are checking whether it can continue producing. A bean plant may regain firm leaves, but need time and cooler conditions before a new flush of flowers succeeds. Okra appears built for summer heat, and that reputation can make gardeners ignore it during a crisis. But a heat-loving crop can still suffer when the root zone dries beyond reach. Check the lower leaves, the growing tip, and the speed at which new pods are forming. Some lower leaf yellowing can occur as the plant grows, but widespread drooping, stalled tips, or pods becoming tough unusually fast may indicate stress. Water deeply when the soil is genuinely dry. Do not keep the ground waterlogged. Established okra can search a larger soil volume than shallow-rooted crops, but plants in containers or compacted beds have less room to compensate. Harvest pods while they are tender. During hot weather, they can become fibrous quickly. Leaving oversized pods on the plant redirects energy into seed production. A timely harvest helps the plant continue. Look for spider mites or other pests if leaves appear stippled, bronzed, or webbed. Do not blame every change on heat. Heat tolerance is not pest resistance, and it is not drought immunity. Okra may survive the afternoon and still lose tomorrow's tender harvest if moisture has been inconsistent. Sweet corn creates the opposite visual problem. It may remain upright and convince you that nothing is wrong. Corn needs water through a broad, active root zone. A quick splash at the base of each stalk is not enough. Check soil in several places along the row and several inches deep. If it is dry, irrigate slowly enough to moisten the full root area. Mulch can reduce surface heating and evaporation, especially in a small garden block. Watch the leaves. Corn leaves may roll inward to reduce exposed surface area. If they remain tightly rolled early in the morning, the plants may still be under significant water stress. If they open overnight and roll only during peak heat, the response may be more temporary. The growth stage matters. Heat and water stress during tasseling and silking can affect pollination and kernel development. A stalk can remain green and upright, while an ear is not being filled properly. Check whether silks are emerging normally and whether the planting has enough moisture through this critical period. Do not pour concentrated fertilizer onto hot, dry soil. If the crop is due for feeding, restore moisture and allow the plants to stabilize first. Fertilizer cannot repair pollen or silks that were already damaged by extreme conditions. A strong stalk can hide a struggling ear. Recovery is not only about whether the corn stands tomorrow, it is about whether the plant can complete pollination and fill the crop. Watermelon faces a different challenge because a long vine may look healthy at one end while the root zone is failing at the other. With watermelon, always trace the vine back to the crown. The leaves far from the roots may be the first to wilt, but the rescue begins where the main stem enters the soil. Check moisture there and across the root zone. If the soil is dry, water deeply and gradually. If it is moist, protect the vine from the most intense afternoon radiation and give it time. Watermelon dislikes severe moisture swings while fruit is developing. A cycle of very dry soil followed by a sudden flood does not create stable recovery. The aim is consistent moisture, enough to support the vine without leaving the roots in saturated soil. Do not cut a long runner only because several leaves are scorched. Follow it to the tip. If the growing tip is green and flexible, the runner may continue producing useful foliage. Remove a runner only when it is clearly dead, broken, badly diseased, or no longer connected to healthy tissue. Inspect the fruit. A melon resting on bare, hot soil can heat intensely. Use a dry board, tile, straw, or another clean support to separate the fruit from a scorching surface when appropriate. If the fruit has suddenly lost shade because nearby leaves were damaged, create temporary protection without wrapping it in material that traps moisture. Look at the smallest fruit and new flowers. The plant may keep larger melons while abandoning very young fruit. Do not assume every loss means the entire vine is failing. Watch whether the tip continues growing and whether the crown remains firm. A vine can replace a damaged leaf, but it cannot undo repeated stress reaching the developing fruit. Stable moisture and protected foliage matter more than a dramatic one-time rescue. Cantaloupe needs the same discipline, but its denser canopy creates another decision. Before removing a damaged leaf, ask what that leaf is still protecting beneath it. Trace the vines to the crown and check the main runners. If the crown is firm, the soil is appropriately moist, and the growing tips remain green, the plant has useful living structure. Partly damaged leaves can still shade melons. Do not expose every fruit to direct afternoon sun. in an attempt to make the plant look cleaner. Remove leaves later if they become fully brown, brittle, or diseased. Keep airflow in mind, but do not perform a major pruning immediately after extreme heat. The plant needs enough leaf area to recover and continue feeding fruit. Check young melons. Fruit that remains firm and continues changing in size is a better sign than fruit that yellows, softens, or stops developing. Check flowers as well. A temporary pause in fruit set may occur even if established fruit continues to grow. Avoid feeding the vine heavily. Resume nutrition only after the root zone is stable and the plant is producing normal new growth. Continue monitoring for mites, whiteflies, or disease symptoms because stress can make a dense canopy more vulnerable. Watermelon and cantaloupe teach the same central lesson. Protect the roots, preserve useful foliage, and avoid violent changes in soil moisture. Potatoes require a different diagnosis because the most important part of the crop is hidden, and the plant prefers cooler root conditions than these summer vines. Potatoes are not heat lovers. When soil temperatures remain high, the canopy may struggle and tuber development can slow, but one afternoon of wilt does not tell you what has happened below ground. First, consider the age of the planting. A mature potato plant approaching the end of its cycle naturally begins yellowing and declining. Sudden collapse during a heat wave is different from a gradual, expected dieback. Look at how quickly the change happened and whether all plants in the container or row responded the same way. Check moisture carefully. Potato roots need access to water, but tubers should not sit in saturated, airless soil. In a container, the outside wall may become extremely hot. Light-colored shielding around the pot, moving it away from reflected heat, or insulating the container from a hot surface can protect the root zone. An appropriate mulch layer can help keep the soil cooler and reduce moisture loss. If the soil is dry, water evenly. Do not repeatedly wet only the top inch. If it is already moist, do not flood the container because the foliage is limp. Improve shade around the container, reduce radiant heat, and check drainage. Do not immediately dig the crop because the leaves wilted once. Disturbing the soil is irreversible. Give the plant time to show whether stems and growing points recover. If the plant was already near maturity and the canopy continues its natural decline, harvest timing becomes a separate decision based on variety, planting date, and tuber maturity, not panic. Do not apply a strong fertilizer to force new leaves. A damaged canopy does not immediately tell you what happened to the tubers, and a flush of tender growth may not be useful in extreme heat. Stabilize moisture and temperature first. Sweet potatoes respond almost in the opposite way. They enjoy warm conditions, but their vines can still wilt if a container dries deeply, or if roots are confined in an overheated volume of soil. Follow the vines back to the planting point. Check the soil there rather than judging moisture under a runner that has crossed the bed. If the root zone is dry, water slowly and deeply. If it is moist, wait for evening and provide temporary afternoon relief if the plant is in an unusually exposed container. Do not cut off long green vines simply because leaves have fallen flat. Check the tips. Flexible green tips can resume growth. Remove only tissue that is clearly dead or diseased after the plant has had time to recover. A living canopy does not guarantee that storage roots are developing normally. Repeated drought stress can affect overall growth even when the vines survive. Keep moisture reasonably consistent, but avoid keeping the bed soggy. Sweet potatoes may forgive the heat, but they will not ignore a root zone that repeatedly dries beyond their reach. Strawberries have much shallower roots, so they move near the top of the emergency list. Strawberries can go from healthy to scorched quickly in a small pot, hanging basket, tower, or shallow bed. Their crowns and roots occupy a relatively small zone, and that zone can heat and dry rapidly. Check moisture near the crown without burying or soaking the crown itself. If the soil is dry, water at soil level. If it is moist, give the plants afternoon shade and cool the surrounding environment, rather than adding more water. Look into the center of each plant. New green leaves emerging from a firm crown are a strong sign. Older leaves may have brown, crisp edges and still surround a living center. Do not cut the plant down to the crown on the first evening. Wait, then remove leaves that are fully dead. Inspect fruit. Berries may become soft, bleached, dry, or sunken after severe exposure. Remove fruit that is clearly spoiled so it does not attract pests or decay against the plant. Fruit that is merely warm or lightly marked may still be usable, depending on its condition. Keep mulch from covering the crown. A loose mulch around the root zone can reduce heating, but a buried crown can rot. Avoid leaving fruit and leaves wet for long periods, especially overnight. A strawberry plant may survive while losing the current flush of fruit. That is still a meaningful rescue if the crown remains alive and new leaves emerge. With strawberries, the green center matters more than the scorched edge of an older leaf. Basil can collapse just as quickly. Its soft leaves lose firmness dramatically, but a firm green stem can hold the entire recovery. Check the soil before watering. Basil in a small pot may truly be dry, while basil in a larger container may be wilted above moist soil. If dry, re-wet the mix slowly. If moist, move the plant out of punishing afternoon sun and let the temperature drop. Feel the stem. A green, firm stem with living nodes can produce new leaves even if some foliage is damaged. A dark, soft, collapsing stem is a different warning and may indicate more than simple heat wilt. Do not harvest or prune the plant heavily while it is collapsed. Give it time to rehydrate. Once it has recovered, remove leaves or tips that are clearly dead. If part of the top is damaged but lower nodes remain healthy, a careful cut later may encourage branching. That decision is safer after the plant has shown which tissue is alive. Avoid fertilizer until the basil is holding itself normally and showing stable new growth. Keep moisture steady, provide morning light, and protect it from the harshest afternoon exposure during the heat wave. A limp basil leaf can recover, a dark, softened stem may not. Swiss chard, our final crop, often loses outer leaves while protecting a center that can grow again. Examine the crown and the youngest leaves. Outer blades may lie flat, scorch at the edges, or tear in hot wind. If the center is firm and green, the plant can often continue once conditions improve. Check the soil. Swiss chard needs consistent moisture for tender growth, but do not flood a wet crown. Water the root zone when it is dry. Shade the plant during extreme afternoon heat, especially in a container or a bed exposed to reflected heat. Do not harvest all the leaves immediately after the heat wave. The plant needs living foliage. Wait until it has rehydrated, then remove outer leaves that are fully dead, slimy, or broken. Leave the center untouched. The outer leaves show where the heat struck. The center tells you whether the plant still has a future. We have now checked all 15 crops, but the final answer does not come from how they look in this single moment. It comes from what they do after sunset. Tomorrow morning, and over the next 48 hours, begin the first follow-up after the direct sun leaves the garden. Do not expect every leaf to rise immediately. A plant that has spent hours under extreme heat may need time for the root zone to cool and for water movement to normalize. Walk the garden in the same order you used during the rescue. Touch the soil before adding anything. If you watered earlier, check whether that water actually entered the root zone. In very dry potting mix, water may run down a gap beside the container and escape through the bottom while the center stays dry. In dense soil, water may still be standing near the surface. The plant that received water is not necessarily the plant whose roots received water. Look for early movement. Cucumber and zucchini leaves may begin to lift at the edges. Basil leaves may regain some shine. Tomato leaflets may stop hanging straight down. Swiss chard may raise its central leaves while the damaged outer leaves remain flat. These are useful signs, but they are not the final result. If the soil is now appropriately moist, do not water again just to make the plant recover faster. More water cannot force a heat response to end, and saturated soil can reduce oxygen around the roots. Give the plant shade, airflow, and time. If the soil remains dry because the first irrigation did not penetrate, apply another slow round. Work in stages. In a container with mix that is pulled away from the sides, gently direct water across the surface rather than into one channel. Do not compact the soil around delicate roots. Check the stems and crowns as the evening cools. A stem that remains firm is encouraging. A crown that is soft, dark, or developing a foul smell needs closer attention. Do not confuse a naturally flexible vine with a rotting crown. Compare tissue near the base with healthy tissue farther along the plant. Now examine flowers and fruit, but do not make every decision tonight. A pepper blossom may drop tomorrow. A bean flower may already have been affected. A tiny melon may stop growing over the next several days. Heat injury often unfolds after the most dramatic wilt has passed. Before bed, make simple notes. Which containers were dry? Which beds were moist? Which plants lifted after shade alone? Which needed water? Which had damaged fruit? You do not need a complicated chart. A few labels or phone photos from the same angle can prevent you from relying on memory. Tomorrow morning is the most important comparison. Check the garden before direct sun heats the leaves. A crop that is still severely wilted in cool morning conditions needs more investigation than one that recovered overnight and wilts only at peak heat. Start with the highest priority plants: strawberries in small containers, basil, cucumbers, zucchini, and any newly planted crop with a limited root system. Then inspect fruiting plants carrying a heavy load. Check corn during tasseling and silking. Check melons at the crown. Check potatoes in hot containers. Check even the okra and sweet potatoes that looked strong yesterday. Ask 4 questions at each plant. Is the root zone now evenly moist? Is the stem or crown firm? Is the growing point green? Are flowers and young fruit still holding? If the answer to the first 3 questions is yes, the plant has a strong foundation for recovery. If the foliage is still imperfect, wait. Cosmetic damage is not the same as structural failure. If the soil is moist, but the plant remains collapsed, inspect drainage, roots where visible, and the base of the stem. Consider whether the container overheated, whether the plant was already suffering from disease, or whether pests were present before the heat. The heat wave may have exposed a problem rather than caused every symptom. If the soil is dry again by early morning, the root volume may be too small, the soil may be repelling water, or the plant may be losing moisture unusually fast. A larger reservoir of soil, a better mulch layer, or more frequent checks during extreme weather may be needed. Do not jump directly to multiple heavy waterings per day without confirming dryness. For tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, beans, and melons, look for flower drop. Do not treat it as an emergency fertilizer deficiency. The plant may need cooler conditions before successful flowering resumes. Keep it stable and allow the next blossoms to develop. For cucumbers, zucchini, okra, and beans, harvest produce that is ready. Do not leave mature fruit or pods to become oversized while the plant is recovering. Harvesting does not cure heat stress, but it can remove unnecessary demand and preserve eating quality. For corn, observe the leaves and reproductive stage. Morning leaf rolling suggests continuing stress. If the plants are silking, stable moisture is especially important. Do not rely on a single wet spot near one stalk. Check across the block. For potatoes, compare the heat event with the normal maturity of the planting. Do not interpret expected late-season dieback as a rescue failure. And do not interpret sudden heat collapse as normal without checking the roots and moisture. At the 24-hour mark, you can begin making careful pruning decisions. Remove leaves that are entirely brown, brittle, broken, or clearly decaying. Use clean tools. Do not remove every leaf with a damaged edge. A partly green leaf can still make energy and shade fruit. Prune gradually. When a plant has already lost leaf area to heat, a major cleanup can expose stems, crowns, and fruit to another day of intense sun. If another hot day is forecast, preserve useful shade. Remove fruit that is rotting, leaking, badly sunken, or clearly abandoned by the plant. Keep fruit that remains firm and continues developing, even if the plant lost a few flowers. With sun-scalded tomatoes or peppers, the damaged portion will not turn healthy again, but the rest of the fruit may still be usable if it remains sound. Judge each fruit rather than stripping the entire plant. Continue temporary shade when temperatures remain extreme. Position shade so it blocks the strongest afternoon sun, but allows morning light and airflow. Shade cloth should be supported above foliage when possible, not pressed against leaves. A wall, fence, umbrella, or other structure can create shade, but watch for trapped heat and reflected light. At 24 hours, fertilizer is usually still not the priority. Look for stable hydration and normal new growth first. A plant that is barely holding itself upright does not need to be pushed into producing tender tissue. When the heat breaks and the plant resumes growth, return to an appropriate, light feeding schedule based on the crop and soil, not on panic. At 48 hours, sort the garden into 3 practical groups. The first group has recovered its posture and maintained firm growth through the cool part of the day. The stems and crowns are healthy. The root zone is stable. Some leaves may be marked, but the plant continues growing. These crops can gradually return to normal care while you remain alert for another hot spell. The second group is alive, but has lost part of its production. A tomato may stand upright, but drop blossoms. A pepper may hold mature fruit, but lose the smallest fruit. A bean plant may need time to flower again. A strawberry crown may survive while the current berries are lost. A zucchini may recover from the center while one young fruit fails. This is still a rescue. Do not measure success only by whether the plant looks perfect. The third group remains severely collapsed or shows structural damage. The growing point may be dead. The crown may be soft. The main stem may be dark and failing. Roots may smell rotten, or the plant may have no response despite a corrected root zone and cooler conditions. These plants need a closer diagnosis. Some may be pruned back to living tissue. Some perennial strawberries may regrow from a healthy crown. Some annual crops may not have enough living structure or season remaining to justify continued rescue. Make that decision from evidence, not from the appearance of one hot afternoon. Remember that 48 hours is an observation window, not a universal deadline. Heat injury can reveal itself later, and recovery can take longer. Continue watching new growth, flowers, fruit, and root zone moisture over the following days. Now use what the garden taught you to prepare for the next heat wave. Improve mulch before the next event. Organic mulch can reduce evaporation and moderate soil temperature, but it should not be piled against stems, crowns, or trunks. Check beneath it rather than assuming mulched soil is moist. In containers, even a mulched surface cannot fully protect roots from a black pot sitting on hot pavement. Move portable containers before temperatures peak. Morning sun with afternoon protection may be safer than an exposed west-facing wall. Lift pots from scorching concrete when possible. Use feet, blocks, a bench, or another stable support that allows drainage and reduces direct heat transfer. Do not create an unstable setup that can tip. Set up shade cloth before the plants collapse. Use a shade level suitable for vegetables and the intensity of your climate. The goal is to reduce the harshest radiation, not turn a sun crop into a shade crop. Morning light and filtered afternoon light can preserve photosynthesis while reducing stress. Avoid major pruning immediately before a heat wave. Leaves protect fruit and stems. A clean, open plant may look attractive, but sudden exposure can cause sun scald. Perform necessary pruning gradually and with the forecast in mind. Avoid strong fertilizer applications just before or during extreme heat, especially in dry soil. Feed according to the crop's real needs once moisture and growth are stable. More fertilizer is not more resilience. Plan for crop differences. Tomatoes need stable moisture and leaf cover over fruit. Peppers may hide stress in blossoms and young fruit. Eggplant tolerates warmth, but suffers when containers overheat. Cucumbers and zucchini wilt dramatically and must be judged again after sunset. Beans may survive but pause production. Okra loves heat but needs tender pods harvested and roots supplied. Corn needs moisture across a broad zone, especially during pollination. Watermelon and cantaloupe need stable crown moisture and protected fruit. Potatoes need cooler soil. Sweet potatoes tolerate warmth but not endless root zone drought. Strawberries and basil require fast attention in small containers. Swiss chard may regrow from a living center. This knowledge turns a frightening scene into a series of manageable decisions. A garden that collapses in the afternoon is not always a garden that has been lost. The best heatwave rescue is not the fastest reaction, it is the right response for the right crop at the right time. Before you water again, read the soil. Before you cut, find the living growing point. Before you fertilize, wait for stable growth. Before you pull a plant, compare it after sunset, and again in the cool morning. Some plants will stand back up, some will survive but sacrifice flowers, fruit, or outer leaves. Some will reveal damage that cannot be reversed. Honest rescue means accepting all three outcomes while protecting every part that is still alive. So give the garden shade. Restore moisture where the roots are truly dry. Protect the foliage that still serves a purpose. Watch the crowns, the tips, the flowers, and the smallest fruit. Then let the plants show you what the heat took and what it did not. Do not pull them yet.